Welcome to another episode of Shelf Life, where I look at games I've covered on both the podcast and the YouTube channel and tell you whether they're still in my collection. First up is Magic Maze, a real-time game that we reviewed on the podcast along with 5-Minute Dungeon and Escape. So has Magic Maze stayed fresh and fun? Yes, it has. Magic Maze almost didn't survive in my collection. It was saved by two major events. First, my 6-year-old son, who you saw recently on my playthrough of The Mind, really enjoys the game. Additionally, as you might have seen on the channel, I created my own solo variant for the game where you switch between your two hands as though it's two players. That's really made the solo game come alive for me, whereas with the official solo variant I was pretty frustrated. Next up is Ghost Stories, one of the early co-op games that really blazed the way for others to follow. So does Ghost Stories have a ghost of a chance of still being in my collection? It does not. When I borrowed Peter's copy of Ghost Stories to review it, I was pleasantly surprised by the gameplay. It was better than I remembered. I did still find the characters unbalanced. One of the red characters is almost completely useless. And also the dice rolling, which was so central to the design, but also very frustrating, really wasn't that much fun. So while I respect the game and think it's better than I remember, still not really one I need to have in my collection. Third, we have Eldridge Horror from Fantasy Flight Games. You all know I love that Lovecraft, so is Eldritch Horror still around? I guess it was just one Lovecraft too many. I still really respect Eldritch Horror for being a more streamlined, more accessible version of the classic Arkham Horror gameplay, and my son is actually really upset that I traded this one away. He still asks for it, which makes me feel kind of terrible. But the honest truth is that except for the accessibility, that's the one positive thing going for it, Arkham Horror the card game is way better than Eldritch in basically every way. Well, every way except one. It's clearly much cheaper to buy into Eldritch. I do have to respect that. Fourth is Sentinels of the Multiverse, one of the first modular deck system games. So is Sentinels of the Multiverse still my superhero game of choice? So far, it is. I love Sentinels for the variety of characters, villains, environments, and how they all come together. That being said, these days for solo, I'm almost exclusively playing on the app just because it's so much simpler and cleaner to use. And to be completely honest, this one's in my trade or sell pile because, quite honestly, I think I'm gonna like Marvel Champions better. So it's here for now, but Sentinels, I think your days are numbered. Fifth is The Legacy of Dragan. This is a choose-your-own-adventure fantasy adventure game with no dice rolling, where everything is determined by your skills and choices. So did Legacy of Dragan win me over with its story? Not exactly. I did initially have a really great time playing this with my wife. You can still go back and listen to the podcast episode we did together reviewing it, the only time she's been on. Overall, the story dragged in the middle. A lot of the encounters didn't seem to have any cohesiveness in why they mattered or what you were doing. And in the end, honestly, I wanted some dice rolling. The fact that you just picked option A or option B, and often they kind of led to the same thing with just a different amount of stamina loss, didn't feel fulfilling. 6 is Kanabi, like Magic Maze, another limited communication game. So is Kanabi still making fireworks in my gaming life? I guess so. Kanabi is one of my wife's favorite games, so even if I decide I don't like it that much, I think it'll probably stay in my collection, potentially forever. But I do have to give the game credit. It's tense, it's fun, the sort of logic and communication tricks you can figure out while working within the constraints of communication in the game are really exciting. And when everything comes together perfectly and you read each other's signals just right and you lay down that final card and play a perfect game, it is amazing. 7th is the card game The Mind. In this one, players work to play their cards in numerical order without talking at all. So is that psychic ninja rabbit still prancing around in my house? Here he is. As you saw in the playthrough with my son, he's really enjoying it. It's helping him to count better, so that's certainly wonderful. But also, this is one of my mainstays for social gatherings when I have 3 or 4 people over and we just sit down and try a few rounds with The Mind. Yes, people can debate whether it's a game or not. I don't really care about all that. I have fun with it with my family. I have fun with it with my friends. It's a great experience regardless of how you define it. Number 8 is the Pathfinder adventure card game. There's a bit of a deck builder mixed with dice chucking where you progress through campaigns. Did the Pathfinder adventure card game level up and make the cut? It did, in a swanky new form. This one is interesting because when we reviewed it on the podcast, I did not own it anymore. I had sold all of my sets because I found the game too repetitive and random and sometimes frustrating. But when I was sent the new core set, which in my opinion improves pretty much all of the rough patches of the game, I got hooked again. You finally have a story and some context to what you're doing. The scenarios, while still repetitive, have some more variation and fun to them. And a big thing is, the leveling, which was always my favorite part of the game, became more consistently interesting. Number 9 is a special one for me, the very first game I ever reviewed on the one-stop co-op shop, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. So is my first reviewed game still on my shelf? Come on, no. If you watch my original video, you'll know that I don't really like this game. The deck building is boring and pointless and doesn't let you put together combos. And while the book opening idea is fun, the bloat in books 5, 6, and 7 of extra rules and mechanics that you just don't need isn't really a welcome thing. Number 10, also coming from a book series, is The Reckoners. The Reckoners is a dice manipulation and placement game where you, regular humans, face off against epic, super villains that have suddenly popped up all over the world. It's got a great theme, but did it have staying power? In this case, I guess the game wasn't too super. Honestly, the game is not bad. I still really enjoy the simultaneous play. I think the dice manipulation is fun. But while I'd still overall give it a positive review, I would say over repeated plays, the extreme lack of variety really shines through. Now, I have heard there's an expansion coming where they might add some of that stuff back in, and that could really reinvigorate the game for me. But for now, eventually playing it, I just got kind of bored and felt like I had already seen everything, so it had to go away. So this month we had 5 games kept out of 10 at 50% ratio. Although with one of them on the chopping block, I guess it's gonna be 40% pretty soon. I'll see you again in September and we'll check in on how more of my games are holding up. Good gaming everyone, and I'll see you at the next stop.